Hey guys, it's Amber. How are ya? So today I thought I would tell you guys about another interesting case, but this one is a little bit different than last time. It kind of has like the same baseline, but boy, I found out about this movie because I was watching This Is the End the other day, just typical quarantine, and in the recommendeds I saw a movie called True Story, and I was like, okay, is it true? Yeah, I understand why they made a movie about it, but it has Jonah Hill and James Franco in it, and it's a very serious movie, so I was like, okay, this will be interesting. If you've seen the movie, you basically already know, but if you haven't, I'm going to tell you about Christian Longo. And there's another person in the story named Michael Finkel, who it was a New York Times writer, but he's not really that important in the story. In the movie he is, but right now I'm just going to tell you about Christian. Christian Longo was born on January 23rd, 1974 in Iowa, and was the oldest of two boys to a woman named Joy. Her husband was allegedly abusive, but she would eventually leave him when Christian was about 10, and she would convert from Catholic to Jehovah's Witness. She met a man named Joseph Longo at her church, and they would get married, and Joseph would eventually adopt both boys, and they would both be raised under Jehovah faith. For this, I think it's important to know roughly what Jehovah's Witness belief is. Roughly, their belief is that the world is in the grips of Satan and is waiting to be resurrected by Jebus. I'm going to say this right now, I'm not a very religious type person, but I'm not, going to crap on anybody's religion. And after Joe and Joy got married, they moved to Kentucky. And Christian was allegedly not the best child, because when he didn't get good grades in school, he eventually hacked into the system to change his grades. And because of this, also because he was easily distracted in school, his parents pulled him from public school and would homeschool him. But he never graduated high school, although he did dedicate himself to the door-to-door ministry. Now, I'm not sure if that school thing happened in Kentucky or when they moved to Michigan, but they eventually moved to Michigan. When Christian was 18, he would meet a woman named Mary Jane, who was in the same congregation as he was. She was 25 years old at the time when they met. She was raised with Jehovah's Witness faith her entire life. She worked as a secretary for the University of Michigan School of Dentistry. When they started dating, Christian had just moved out of his parents' house and was working at a place that sold and installed like spas, fireplaces. And apparently in Jehovah's Witness faith, you are not allowed to go outside of your religion for partners. Like, I assume they just all meet in church. I don't know. If you know anything more about that, let me know, because like I said, I'm not very religious. They got married in the spring of 1993, and they moved into an apartment that was above a restaurant in Depot Town. Nothing happened for 5 years, so I'm going to skip to 1997, where they had their first child named Zachary, and 14 months later, they would have a second child named Sadie. By now, their apartment was way too small. They bought a house from Mary Jane's stepdad, and Mary Jane has said that she was the main source of income at the time, but she quit her job to stay home with the babies, and Christian also quit his job. I don't know why he quit his job, but he would tell her parents that he was working at a place that distributed New York Times, and he would often read them, like read the articles. It said that he told them that he did that, but I think he actually did work there. In the fall of 1999, they had another child named Madison, and at this time Christian was 25 years old in 2000. And then Christian does something that I don't think I'll ever understand. He quits his job again, okay? And then he uses the market value of his house, which is $80,000, as collateral to start a business. He started a construction contracting business called Final Touch. Chris began buying luxury cars and boats and taking vacations, all while he was bouncing house payment checks and had no health insurance. So, smart guy. And then in February of 2000, his car got repossessed, so he goes to a dealership, hands them a fake ID, and just drives a car off the lot straight up. It was worth $33,000, and he just drove off with it. And then when he got home, he replaced the license plate on it so they couldn't report it as stolen, but he had a car. I don't know if it was like Mary Jane's car or anything, but he had a car, took that license plate off the stolen car, replaced it with this one, and then just drove around in that. I don't know how that worked for a while, but it worked for a whole minute. At some point around this time also, Christian began an affair with another Jehovah's Witness at the same congregation, and Mary Jane found out by reading his emails. Mary Jane confronted him in May of 2002, and he admitted to it. He was defaulting loans, and he was hiring employees that he couldn't pay. And he somehow obtained 2 construction vehicles and a forklift. Don't know how. He tried to sell the forklift for $5,000. He sold it, and then the person that bought it sued him because he found out that it was stolen. Like, if you're gonna go through so much of that, just get a job. With debt overwhelming him, he began setting up fake addresses to reroute bill collectors. He tried his hand in forgery. His main client apparently wasn't paying him fast enough, so he wrote 6 fraudulent checks in their name to himself. He was able to cash those 6 checks for a month, which totaled up to $30,000 before the company was like, dude, where's all our money going? And they called the police. On July 14th of 2000, Chris tried to cash another fraud check at the bank, but the bank called the police and he left, and in a rush when he left his actual ID there. He was arrested that afternoon and admitted to all the check fraud, and police called Mary, and then she actually showed up to the police station in the stolen vehicle. But police apparently determined that she had no idea what he was doing and had no part in it. I don't know what actually happened to the car. I'm assuming they took it, but yeah, I never got any information on like where the car went or what they did with it, but I'm assuming the cops took it because it's stolen. September 2000, Christian was charged with 4 felonies. Each of those felonies could have earned him 14 years in prison, but he pleaded guilty, so he only got probation and restitution. The probation was supposed to last for 3 years. He was also required to meet monthly with a parole officer, perform 80 hours of community service, and pay back all the money in $905 monthly payments. The detective learned that another investigation into Chris was happening near Ypsilanti that was regarding the construction vehicles that he got. The detective could take no action because it was another agency's case. 3 weeks after his guilty plea, the same detective began hearing from his employers that they weren't getting paid. The detective went to Chris's parole officer, but he couldn't do anything with it. He continued to meet with Chris until May 2001. Meanwhile, after Chris pled guilty, his church defellowshipped him, like shunned him and his family from the church. He was also going through the fact that his wife knew that he was cheating on her, so I mean, his whole world was just crashing down. Then he obtains a credit card in his stepfather's name and just starts charging up a storm. He charged nearly $100,000 in his dad's name, in his stepdad's name, which is like, bruh. So after that, Chris, claiming that he wanted a better life for his family, he took them all and moved up to Ohio, Toledo, Ohio, where they didn't move into like a house or an apartment. They moved into a warehouse, which that set off a parole violation because he's not supposed to leave, so he left, and they're like, okay. And while they were in Toledo, Chris continued his check fraud. Didn't even have proper plumbing for a while in their house, or in the warehouse. They would keep moving to hotels and motels because they couldn't keep the warehouse for long, and they even pawned her wedding ring to stay afloat for a while. Only got them like a few $100s, so it's not like, you know, they probably made like a rent payment or something. Then that's it. Mary's sisters eventually didn't hear from her for a while, so they made a missing persons report. Before this though, Chris was getting paranoid about all the stuff that was coming to him, so he up and moved again to Oregon, and they rented a small vacation house. But only a few weeks after they arrived, he fell behind on payments again. He pawned some crab rings that he stole from the property before leaving, and he used that money for a room in Newport, Oregon. And like, this is another thing that really blows my mind. He was somehow able to convince the manager of a nearby Bay condo that he was working for a telephone company and was awaiting a paycheck, so he couldn't pay him now. The manager bought it and allowed them to move into a $1,500 a month condo with no money up front, which is just like unheard of. Chris then took a part-time job at Starbucks where he claimed that he was like the manager of some really big tech company and he just worked at Starbucks because he liked the coffee, but really he needed money and he was just a little baby who couldn't admit that he needed help. The family would run out of money days after his paycheck and they couldn't pay rent. And then Chris would eventually say that he was forced to pump a tank of gas and then leave, which I doubt anybody put a gun to your head and say, hey, steal gas, but you know. And Chris knew that he would eventually have to break the news to his wife where all the money was coming from. He would say, quote, that was the beginning of the end, which has two meanings, okay? So on December 19th, 2001, there was a man working at his marina, and he saw a body floating in the marina, so he called the cops. Digitally enhanced photos of the boy were released to the public, and a couple that used to babysit them said, yeah, I think that's him. 3 days later, divers searched the area again and found another body of a little girl with a pillowcase filled with rocks tied to her ankles. Then on December 26th, 2 suitcases were found, one containing the body of a little girl, and then the other containing the body of a woman. And she was completely naked. She was found in the suitcase, and they eventually were able to identify her as Mary Jane. So this happens, so they're like, alright, where the hey is the father? What's he doing? Autopsies later did report that all 4 victims did die of asphyxia. Naturally, they want to talk to the father, so it turns out that Christian actually left the day that Zachary was found, and he would later detail how on December 16th, he rented a movie and went to the gym. He later attended a work Christmas party and gave one of the employees a bottle of her perfume. And then he also talked about how his wife was leaving him for another man. Then on the 19th, he picks up his paycheck and drove to San Francisco, got a ticket to Cancun, and thought he would party for 2 weeks in Cancun. So he would appear on America's Most Wanted, and eventually an American tourist spotted him, and he was arrested and extradited back to the United States on January 13th, 2002. During his arrest, he said his name was Michael Finkel. And if you remember me mentioning that name, that was the author that he would read all of the articles from in the New York Times. So when he was caught, he was like, yeah, my name's Michael. So Michael was called and he was like, what you talking about? I'm arrested for what? And at the trial, Chris would take the stand and claim a Shutter Island. Basically, what I call it is a Shutter Island, because if you've never seen the movie Shutter Island, it's wonderful. Leo DiCaprio goes crazy and forgets that he murdered his wife because she drowned the children. And that's just what I call it, because I just can't, wrap my head around the fact that you would murder your entire family and then just take a vacation in Cancun for 2 weeks. Because you messed up your life so bad you have to kill them? No. Claimed that when Mary Jane picked him up from his job that she was acting a little standoffish and kind of like to herself. He claims that that's the night that he told her about or he told her the night before, and then when she picked him up, she was acting weird. So they went home, and he claims that he saw his youngest daughter dead on the ground, or on the bed, I think. And so his reaction was to kill her, but in the moment when he's saying that, he doesn't mention his other 2 kids, so I'm like, what did you do to them? Or what did she do to them in his case? You know what I mean? Or in his, mind story, what did she do to the others? But what happened was that he likely told her what happened. This is my opinion, that he likely told her what happened, and she maybe tried to leave or something, so he just lost it and killed her, killed his youngest, and then took the 2, well, this is proven, that he took the 2 other children and drove them down to a bridge, put rocks in pillowcases, tied it around their ankles, and literally threw them overboard. And he just acts like that wasn't his fault, kind of. I don't know, I never saw actual footage of his trial, but in True Story you see some of the trial and him actually on stage, well, James Franco on the stand, and I don't know, just maybe it's the way that he acted it, but it just doesn't seem genuine in my opinion. But I wasn't there, so I can't say anything like that. Prosecution also found evidence that there was a witness that night on the bridge that claims to have seen a van with children, and then in like 2 minutes they were gone. On April 7th, 2003, after only 4 hours of deliberation, he was found guilty for aggravated murder of Zachary and Sadie. The same jury would reconvene later on to determine whether Christian deserved the death penalty for all 4 murders. On April 16th, the jury only took 6 hours before sentencing Christian Longo to death for trying to claim Shutter Island. Now, normally this is called familicide, but me and my dark humor, I call it Shutter Island. Maybe that's just me being cynical. And then he begins the appeal process that lasted 5 to 10 years and miserably failed. In 2011, he did admit to killing his entire family. And then after this, he would write a letter to a TV station in Oregon claiming that he was researching what a psychiatrist said he was, which was a narcissist, which pretty sure that was accurately diagnosed. In the letter, Christian would say, quote, "His conclusion was narcissistic personality disorder, which he concluded was compensation related to a damaged sense of self." And then this piece of poo writes about how he wants to have death row inmates on the organ donation list, which I don't know about you, but I would be really freaking pissed off if I grew up and realized that I had Ted Bundy's liver. The Department of Corrections has thankfully just been like, no dude, that's stupid. Plus, if you're on death row, you can't give away your organs because they use lethal injection, so it's not like they'd be any good anyway. And then I recently found out that he got married, or he was set to be married in July of 2020, and they only released her first name, but I'm not going to release it. It's probably easy to find it, but that was the story of Christian Longo. I highly recommend you watch the movie if you haven't heard of it or seen it. It's a really good one, and it's a case that will likely piss you off, but it has a justified ending, I think. So, just let me know what you guys thought of this case. Any other cases that you would like me to talk about or research, I will talk about them. Like and subscribe. Let me know any comments you have about the case. Again, anything you know that I don't. I would love to know more. And yeah, I will just see you guys next time. Bye.